of my adult life, I can tell you it's not that simple. People in my position strive to build communities with focus and creating value. Our next panel will help bring light to both the struggle of building a community and the evolution of what it means to the future. It is my pleasure to introduce the next speakers, Melty Tantiwanich and oh my God, we had a switch. And Ohm. If you guys could please come to the stage. Melty is the co-founder, creative director of XP Foundry, developer of Rooniverse, and she has a background in world building, TV, games, IP distribution, and is a member of the Metaverse Council and the Global Esports Federation. I'm excited to hear what she has to say about this next topic, and I'd also like to introduce Ohm Shah. Ohm is passionate about Web3 security, drawing on his background in cybersecurity, consulting, and experience in the crypto space since 2017. He believes in the importance of educating others about the safety and security of Web3. So if I could have you guys come up to the stage. Where's Ohm? Ohm, are you here?
I believe Ohm was here just now, but he disappeared. Probably some technical issue.
Yeah, do you have technical?
Yeah, some technical. I'll check up on Ohm, but I think we can start the discussion intended anyway.
Okay, you know, hey Melty, it's so good to meet you in VR.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
In VR. Yeah.
Here in VR. I'm excited for this. It's so rare that I get to meet somebody who's considered another actual influencer, or at least in the same social realm as myself. And so when I get to meet other people like you, I get really excited about the prospect and having this conversation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm very happy that you guys invited me to be on this particular panel about this particular topic.
Yeah. I guess first conversational aspect we should be talking about, what are the key differences between building a community in Web3 and Web2? Like, what has been your experience so far?
So I think that, like Web3 brings a lot of transparency and accessibility in a lot of aspects. So one aspect I think is a much closer connection between the team and the community members. It's everything's a lot more personal. So that's made stuff like building products or games, in my case, in public, possible, like, because the Web3 population has a much bigger stake, and I say stake, not shares. Oftentimes, these community members are, financially involved, but they can be made to be emotionally involved if you're able to build that very safe and very happy environment for them to be in.
Okay, so from your point of view, it sounds like Web3 is more community driven.
Yeah.
But Web2 is just viewer driven, and maybe like calling yourself part of a community, or like a believer, or a monster, or something of that nature, depending on what particular fandom you're a part of, right?
Yeah. Basically, to me, Web3 like gets you a lot more involved. You have more skin in the game, in in many ways. Yeah.
Is that mainly just through like selling NFTs then, or buying into a community rather than just being an enjoyer of a certain kind of media?
Yeah, it could be that. It could be like a financial investment, but to me, it's more like you were there from the beginning. You saw this product or this game kind of grow up from like nothing, and that naturally makes you just more mentally and emotionally invested in something, because you feel like you are part of like a group of people that own it, I suppose, which in many cases you are.
So would the Web 2 equivalent to that just be like a hipster?
Could be.
Yeah. Somebody who's early on, like, oh, you don't know about so-and-so product?
It could be. That could happen.
Yeah,
I feel
you're
like
not
that's
in the
something.
know.
That's an interaction that I could see happening on like Twitter or something.
Okay. So, I mean, what in your history, like, what have you done to like foster these Web3 communities for the specific brands that you work with?
I'll take Runiverse, which is my game like that I'm currently full-time on. We have 4 co-founders and we have over 20 team members. Most of them are engineers, but some of them are community team members. So if we're talking about, you know, how the community is like kind of engaged and bonding, we take a lot of care in the way that we onboard them. First of all, the first step, the way that we onboard them into the community, the way that we then make them feel like, okay, this is a place that they can enjoy. It's like home. The Discord, which is the platform that my project is using, I believe a lot of projects are using this as well. The platform that we're using there feels immersive. They feel like they're in the world of the Runiverse game. Then from there, it's like much easier to feed them content about what we're building, much easier to educate them in like a fun way. And then once they have kind of like that liking or like that very deep interest in what we're building, they are very likely to get more involved in like events and collaborations and so on that we put out.
What is it about the events that particularly is drawing people into that community?
So on top of sometimes being collaborative with other projects or like bringing new members in, we kind of like make a lot of noise by basically gamifying everything that we do, every process, even some decision-making process, like road building processes. Make sure that, you know, like when we run mini events or mini games, the mechanics are fun. There's like some challenge to it. And there's some sort of collaboration happening between the community members. We really like bag on the fact that a lot of game players or a lot of players who align with our community are like very much social beings and they're like socially driven. So we try to make sure that whenever we do events or mini games, that there's like some sort of cooperation involved between them, because then it helps them bond. It helps us like make a lot more noise. It helps us, you know, show off more of the world. Like there's many benefits to basically gamifying a bunch of stuff that you do in your community.
What about like punishment then? Like it. So have you ever? So maybe instead of like rewarding them, have you tried like punishing them, kind of like Survivor? Like somebody gets kicked out, and they have to like fight to keep their place in the community.
We haven't done that. We've definitely seen. We've had multiple in other projects. Like if you're not active or if you don't click on this one button, they like remove your roles or something, and it's a bit weird to me. But I mean, like if that's what they want to do, that's fine. No, we don't do that like, for sure.
What's the show Lost, where they had like a button that they had to press every 48 hours, and if they didn't press it, like they didn't know what was going to happen.
It's literally that. Like, I've seen it. So like in the Runiverse Discord, there's like this one channel that was like handled by I think 2 of the volunteer moderators, and they would put in their notifications of when other Discords are like putting announcements saying like click this button or you'll get your role removed. Like they will literally like remind in that channel. and people in Runeberg can like subscribe to it. Like it got
that's
that bad.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sneaky.
Yeah, it is.
So I guess what are the have you guys ever like sat down and written like a set of best practices how to foster that sense of community within your within Runiverse then?
Yeah, I suppose we do have, I mean, what for one, we have a very clear code of conduct for the team members. Like the community team members have some of the strictest code of conduct, and it's simple stuff. It's stuff that you wouldn't even like. Lots of people will be like, that sounds so small. Like for example, one of our main rules for community staff interacting with anybody, whether they're in the project or they're out of the project, is you can never ghost them. Like you're not allowed to ignore somebody. That's like a really big rule. And I think that speaks a lot about our values and beliefs and like how we want this project to be. Like we want to keep it a positive place. We want to keep it a place where nobody is not heard. So that's one of the rules. The second one is, of course, you always have to be polite. You always have to be open-minded. You have to be inclusive. So if the team is able to kind of put these values out into the community, it's like, I mean, like people will be surprised how much easier it is for the entire community to follow suit and kind of filter itself out.
Yeah, but those rules just seem like best practices for being a decent human being.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Sometimes they need to be reminded.
Yeah. That's really unfortunate.
It is, but it is the essence of the space, and it's what Web 2 has fostered for us also with social media. You know, like a lot of best practices are now best practices where they used to be just literally common sense, common courtesy.
Do you have anything that is like specific to your community that you put into place? And it can be like just some sort of arbitrary extra rule that you guys have in place to be like, hey, if you press this button, you'll get kicked out, or you know, if you got to vote a king in, or you know, something of that nature.
Nothing as punishing as what you're describing, but we have a pretty good like community economy. We have our community currency, which is not in the game, but it's like kind of the base level participation. Like if you're in the community and you engage with the community currency, which is called Heck Coins, you can participate in events, and then those events can reward you with more meaningful stuff, basically like more items for the actual game or like other projects, assets, you know, stuff like that. So I think that we have a really fun like mini ecosystem in our Discord community that reflects how it will, like how we want it to be in the actual game. Mm-hmm. Like very collaborative, like a balanced player-driven economy.
Okay, I would love to step back for a moment. I mean, we've talked about a lot of, you know, Web3 designing for these communities and world building, I guess. What was the best? So before we actually got into this kind of these ecosystems of like Web3 specific, you were a Web2 builder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for so many probably in this room, they're still actively building in a Web2 space, even though it's for Web3. What are some ways that maybe you and I should be talking about how to build for content and maximizing those communities in Web2 as much as Web3? So
yeah,
it's our. I'm so sorry. Our third panelist just showed up. How's it going?
Pretty good. Sorry, it made me sign up again for some reason.
Made you sign up again?
Yeah, it was interesting.
It was like, you're not good enough. You got to do it twice.
Yeah, I got some error. It was like you have to like some entitlement check or something like that. It was some interesting error. I had to Google it and I had to figure it out, but all good. We're here now.
Here, why don't I give you the center stage,
Oh, okay, of course.
and
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna move around. That way, I can look at both of you guys at the same time, and it'll just help me focus. Um, yeah. So basically, what we're talking about right now is we're talking about how you guys are building specifically in Web 2, and then we'll talk about how to build specifically in Web 3. So, as community builders, how are you guys building communities in Web 2? Like, what are some of the tips that you guys would have for the audience? What kind of methodology were you guys using? I would love to know kind of like maybe your action plans you guys have, so everybody here could take those notes and apply them to their own community building efforts.
Yeah, I think a big piece of it, especially in the Web 2 aspect, is definitely like community building through onboarding and education. So I think that's a crucial factor in it, like onboarding securely and teaching them the proper manners to really be set up in the space is a really effective way to be a community builder, as well as like building content that really delivers value to a community, especially when the main objective is to learn about Web3 and branch into it. I think education and content like that is a real big factor in how you can push a community in a Web 2 fashion. The interesting thing about Web 2 and Web 3 though is the community building, especially via Discord and Twitter and things such as different social media outlets. I feel like Twitter and Discord are prominent for like the Web 3 atmosphere. So building community, especially within those spheres, like engaging with your community on an active basis, like something that we do at Wallet Guard is we run weekly Twitter spaces and talk to our community as much as possible, answering any security questions they might have, and really just building that trust and that relationship with our community that way. And then another thing is just if you're looking to reach out to us, we're always available on Discord. So being available to your communities, I think, also a big factor in it.
And you, Melty?
Yeah, I think that Ohm has really covered everything about like the platforms. For me, I come from, I guess, a background of world building. So even in Web 2, that's kind of like the backbone of how I foster up a community. I build a world that is so immersive in every single detail, that is so able to be received as kind of an escape or like a fantasy place, that this is where you come to now socialize with your new friends who like the same like this world just like you. You can leave everything behind, and this is where you kind of like you can feel like home, you know. So for me, like that's how I've been building my communities in Web 2 and in Web 3. It's just now that the in Web 3 it's like a lot more collaborations with the community. They're a lot more involved, they're a lot more invested. We can hear them more. They're more involved in the processes, and they are able to like actually help design some aspects of the product. And I think that that's really cool. Like, so although like I think that Web 2 and Web 3 are not at all mutually exclusive, I think Web 3 like basically is an elevation of Web 2. Of course, like you need some Web 2 there still. Like this is the cool thing about Web 3. It's much more personal. It's much more accessible.
So in that respect, then, when you are doing your world building and you say, sit down and you create your game Bible for the world that you're looking to create, are you having members of the community help you write entries into it?
So we never put out a game Bible. Like everything that the community has learned about the world of Runiverse is through activities and events. So everything that they've learned about it is like starting from the beginning, which I guess the beginning would be quarter 3, quarter 4 of 2021. It's been literally like chronological from there. So they get like more and more information revealed about the world. And what we do, what I and some of my artists or community staff, for example, do is we literally pick up on comments or suggestions or ideas or like even like fan fiction from the community, and we say, yo, that's a pretty good idea, that's good. And then if we need like to talk to them more about it, then we do that. And then now they're officially involved in the process. But there's many times where we literally just like give out very simple world building decisions like, hey guys, now it's your turn to vote on this and this or that, like we make it really simple for them, really convenient for them to express their ideas or what they like.
So you make it foolproof, or idiot proof. Idiot proof is usually the term for it, right?
Just whatever is like the easiest for them to engage with is fine. Like when we do our mini games, mini events, it's fun, it's complex on the team side, but from the players end, it's like, okay, these are very simple mechanics. I can get this done in a few minutes and I'll come and do it every day, kind of thing.
Okay. So obviously building in these spaces, the biggest two platforms are Discord and Twitter, it seems like. Have you guys been holding Twitter spaces? How have those been going for you?
Me?
No.
I mean, yeah, I have definitely held Twitter spaces. I haven't held like regular Twitter spaces for the project itself, but we've been guests on a lot of shows and podcasts. I know that Ohm said that he holds like weekly Twitter spaces, right?
You really?
Yeah. Yeah, for us, it's definitely like it's a huge community building tool. Just being able to host like on a regular schedule, I think that's an important thing as well. Just making sure that you have scheduled time for these spaces. Like for us, we always we do Sundays around like 3 p.m. Eastern. We're actually trying to figure out a new time slot just to accommodate for more European folks as well. But that is a big factor in it. And like the interesting about Web3 too is like your community is so broad and like so many different time zones. So trying to figure out the right time zones to be able to speak to your community personally is also like an important thing, I think. So figuring out those things and polling your community and really just engaging with them and asking them like when is best for them, or even content, for example, like when we were talking about education and marketing and just all these different things. It's like really like you want to talk with them and understand what they want to learn about. And I think that's like one of the biggest ways of like building community, especially through those mediums.
Yeah, very true about the time zones. It's such a good little extra effort to put in to make sure that like your events and your opportunities kind of span across as many time zones as you can.
Has there ever been a situation that you basically went, hey, this is a really annoying thing that members of my community are doing, and I'd really like them to stop? So for me, for instance, I do weekly spaces, and I usually get people who show up and right before they leave went, by the way, I just followed you. And basically what they're doing is they're trying to farm that engagement to get you to follow back, not because they're particularly interested in what you have to say, but they just want you as a number. And I've actually started to do the Han Solo thing where it's like, I know. I love you.
Oh my gosh.
And so because, the content I personally want to put out, I want to get people involved based on the value that I'm giving and not just, follow for follow or, subscribe for subscribe, right? Because as we know from the history of community building, that's not a great way to build your community. You want people who are there for the value, not for the numbers, right?
Yeah.
That way you have the quality over quantity. So I guess for my question to you guys is, have you guys come into contact with situations of people doing things that are kind of like, that makes me feel really uncomfortable that they're doing it. Maybe I should address it.
Yeah, it's happened once or twice in general, I think. I think the main one that I can think of, I can think of two because we don't really get a lot of conflict or like unwanted behavior in our community per se, just because and I'm very proud of this, just because our community team is able to be, kind of proactive rather than reactive. But anyway, so 2 situations, both of them happened during an event where another community came in and participated in an event. One of them was we played another PvP game, and some of the community members thought that it wasn't fair that there were pro players on the other side, but then we also had pro players. So it was just like complaints. But this is all kind of like, just as long as the community staff are trained, or at first hired and then trained to be equipped to deal with these situations in like a gracious and diplomatic way, it's fine. Because a lot of the times it's just kind of like gamer rage. In my case, it's always just like gamer rage. Like they just got mad, like fresh, because they just lost the game like 2 seconds ago. And so we just try to make everybody calm down, and then it's all fine. But I don't think that there's been a situation where somebody has really like crossed the line in that way. Yeah, but if there was, we will be able to deal with it.
Just ban them. Good.
Yeah.
We don't need you in our community if you're going to cause issues.
Yeah, there's been times where like someone comes in and this, like our community, we don't discuss really like the price action. That's an important thing, but it's not the point of why we're here. Like we're here to build like a really fun environment, and that's like that's the agenda that we push every single day, that this place is fun. So a lot of the times the community just kind of filters itself out, really. Like someone comes in to discuss price action and nobody's really talking about that, they just stop as well, or they leave, either one.
Okay. So I feel that probably goes to this next question, where I feel Ohm is probably more equipped to handle.
Mm-hmm.
What would be like the top 5 safety tips you have for securing your community?
I think there's various. It first is like depending on the type of community you have, right? So this could be like, Discord, or it could be like Twitter. Your Twitter community is a little bit harder to manage in that regard, because like people will be tweeting at you. You really can't control what types of tweets someone tweets at you, right? But let's like talk more in the frame of Discord. I feel like this is more of an applicable area. So there's a couple of things that needs to be done on the admin side of things, like utilizing cold admin accounts for your Discord, making sure that the Discord account that's running and owning the server doesn't get compromised, because that could lead to like phishing, deception, all these different types of links that could be posted and like actually end up causing fiscal loss for some of your community, which would be a huge upset. So making sure that you're using like things like a Discord cold admin, utilizing proper permission sets, actually having a proper Discord auditor come in and look through your Discord server, and then using bots such as like Wix, Spam Defender, different types of bots that are in place to help safeguard these types of measures, and really create that permission basis. Another thing is important for communities, like it's fun to share gifts and stuff like that in community, right? So making sure that you're filtering out links that could be deceptive, but also allowing things like your Twitter sharing, your image, like pulling up gifs and stuff like that. So being very cautious about what you're allowing to basically post it as far as links are concerned is an important thing. And then again, this another really big important thing is like having these bots in place, like Wix and Spam Defender and like so on, these different security bots, because a lot of times when your Discord community gets big enough, you're going to get faced with bots, and like people are going to try and spam your server and post deceptive links. So having those safeguards in place is really going to keep your community safer. And there's a whole bunch of tips out there. So I mean, like there's a bunch of Discord auditors. Like there's a community called Server Forge. You can go research into them. They post a lot of educational material on Discord safety. But I think if I was just going to summarize it into like 5 different tips, I would really say is one, the Discord account that's owning the server has to be pretty locked down. You should only log into that account when you're making announcements and stuff like that. This way that if you get sent a phishing link and you do click on it, the account that owns the server and has the permissions to post like that doesn't get compromised. So that would be like, tip one. Tip two, put the proper moderation bots in place. So like Wix and so on. Tip three would be to have a professional Discord auditor come in and take a look at all your permission sets and make sure that's done right. Tip four would be limit like the links that you're allowing to share in your Discord. So making sure that it's limited to like, Twitter, your project website and stuff like that. And tip five is to create awareness amongst your community that these things happen. Like educating your community proactively is probably one of the best things you can do, so that if you ever end up in a situation where your server does get compromised and your community knows that, hey, this is very indicative of a compromise, I should click this link. And education, I think, is going to be one of the biggest pieces in proactive.
Have you ran into a situation where a member of the internal team has basically gone rogue and tried to take over and destroy your community from within?
Oh, sorry, it cut out a little bit for me. Can you repeat that?
Oh yeah. So I've definitely seen like communities where they'll go down the project pathway and they'll get to distribution of funds and executing, and then they send out their NFTs or whatever, and now there's obligations and money involved, and people sometimes feel, especially within teams, that they're not being fairly compensated. Have you guys ran into a situation where where a project has become toxic, and maybe an internal team member has tried to sabotage said product or project, or had to go public in such a way to discredit the project as a whole? And how would you do damage control in that kind of situation?
So that's a situation I've personally never ran into. But what I would say is that if you don't compensate your moderators and the people properly that are involved in your project, it could lead to less of an incentive to take the proper security measures, and their just lack of understanding, being aware for these different types of things might not be there if they're not adequately compensated. I have seen scams in the past where your moderator and be like, hey, I have this job, I'm paying $2,000 like a week or something like that. Come join our Discord server. We'll get you set up. You can moderate for us. We'll pay you well. Those types of things, those opportunities might be more alluring to someone who's not being fairly compensated. And what tends to happen in those situations is like they expect you to join with your Discord account. You go and try to log into a fake Discord server. You scan a fake bot QR code or something along those lines. They steal your Discord token, and next thing you know, that moderator account is compromised, and they're posting malicious links in your Discord server. So that, I would say, that's probably the most comparable thing I could maybe mention from my personal experience and things I've seen in the past. But maybe.
I love this question.
Sorry. Yeah.
It's a very
Melty,
specific scenario.
I mean, like it's yes, it is a very specific scenario, but we've seen it a lot in
Yeah.
the NFT community specifically, right?
Yeah.
Where a project turns out to be a rug pull, which, and if anybody doesn't know what a rug pull is, it's essentially where a project launches and then often somebody higher up in the project management team will just like run off with the money, or they don't fulfill obligations to the community that they promised when raising funds, or some kind of scenario like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's never happened to us where somebody has gone rogue, like on purpose. Like with Web3, like kind of being this ever growing frontier of opportunities, and basically being described as being like pretty financially driven, like this is something undeniable, right? There's gonna be like a lot more bad actors coming in, like more and more. So right now, like Discord is our primary platform, and there are already security flaws and threats. But I really do think that Web3 communities will move away from Discord at some point when something newer and more suitable comes along. So then when that happens, again, community teams will have to learn new ways to kind of like protect the project and then try to like keep their members safe. What my team, for example, will always need to do is be thorough. Obviously, never underestimate what bad actors are capable of, and always educate your members. So always announce when something's at risk, always communicate, making sure that if something happens maybe to another project in the ecosystem, don't keep them in the dark. And then everyone would want to like protect themselves if they could, right? So the best you can do is really like give them as much information as they can as possible so that they can do that. That's what we kind of do, right? As Web3 people, we just have to like adapt to our environment, I guess.
So I guess that kind of brings me to my next question, where the majority of people in the Web3 ecosystem are about 2 years old. A lot of people in this room have been on that pathway for much longer than that. But given that there has been such an evolution in the last 2 years, how do you guys see it continuing down the pathway? Like, what kind of evolutionary changes in the Web3 community do you see in the future?
I
think that one's
first.
yeah.
Oh, I can go if you want.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead, that's fine.
So you're asking like, what do we see for Web3 communities?
Yeah. What kind
in
of
the future,
predictions do you have for the future of community building in the Web3 ecosystem?
I think it gets more collaborative from here. That's my opinion. I mean, of course, we just spoke about security. It gets also more, I guess, quote unquote, scary from here because, you're in a new frontier. Like there's threats coming all around. There's money involved, blah, blah. But for me, like my first thing is it gets more collaborative. Like hiring is more and more personal. Processes are more and more transparent. This time around, we're in a time where Web3 is an opportunity for not only developers and distributors and celebrities to get the most out of industries such as like gaming and entertainment, right, or tech, but it also gives rewards to players, community members, because without them, these industries would never have boomed this big anyway. So to me, like I said, Web3 is like a really huge elevation from Web2. It's not mutually exclusive, but Web3 is so much more collaborative that you're going to see so much more involvement and so much more like upsides for like just the general like everyday player, I suppose, community member.
What about you? How do you see these? How do you see the evolution of these Web3 communities taking place in the future?
Yeah, I think we shift away from things like Discord. I mean, Discord, you have to imagine like it was originally built for like gamers, and a lot of the infrastructure in place right now, I think that's used for like community building. Like, I think personally, I think Twitter will stay around, but there are other decentralized social media platforms that are doing well. I think that we would probably progress more towards I guess, steering away from things like Discord. I think Discord right now is used because it's popular and people understand it to a regard. But I think there are other tools in the future that'll come around for community. And I think what's really interesting about NFTs and stuff like that is it's a real big community building tool. So I think a lot of the communities, especially in the future, are just going to be formed around NFTs. But I also don't think that a lot of NFTs in the future, or at least the successful projects, I don't think a lot of them will be like PFP projects. I think it'll be different types of projects that maybe are more about community rather than like a PFP project or something along those lines. So I think it's interesting. I think gaming is also a very interesting concept to like where community building could come into play. But if I'm just going to be talking from like an infrastructure perspective, I think we'll shift away from tools such as like Discord eventually. I think there'll be more token gated tools in the future that you can talk to your communities in maybe a more secure manner in that way.
How do you feel security is going to evolve with those shifts? Like, so
Okay.
so we migrate away from Discord. We're still using Twitter. Some other social platform shows up, which we start using to help foster and manage these communities. How does security change with that?
I think a lot of concepts in security remain the same. So I think a lot of like if you look at what people term as like Web3 security specifically, if someone asks me what Web3 security is, first thing that would come to mind for me is like smart contract security, that type of thing. But I think we kind of need to shift away from that because the perspective is really that like security is more of like an encompassing thing. So like where in Web2, if someone said Web2 security, you're talking about like web app security, you're talking about different protocol vulnerabilities, stuff like that. But I think there's got to be like a convergence between the two, and I think like people need to appreciate there's like both sides of it. So like no matter whatever platform we shift to, the inherent security vulnerabilities and risk will still present themselves no matter whatever platform we go to. Phishing will always be a thing. I think phishing accounts for 90. Okay, so a fun stat is that over 90% that where hackers or adversaries will play to a human psyche to really get you to compromise what you might have as a proper security hygiene or protocol. So that type of thing will never change. But I do think that security as a whole is a ever evolving cat and mouse game where one side gets better and the next side gets better. So it's hard to say where we'll be at a couple years from now, but I do know that there'll always be an active defense side being built up and an active offense side being built up. So it's an ever evolving space, which is why it's so interesting.
Okay. So I'd like to ask, how do you balance the decentralization nature of Web3 with the need for community-wide coordinates, governance, and security?
I think it's
Like how do
interesting.
you?
I think
Yes, yeah. So how do you balance the ability of the autonomy nature of Web3 while building those communities as a whole, and how do you protect them?
Yeah, so I think an interesting thing that a lot of communities have been doing. You can look at some major NFT communities. They built the DAOs and they put like investment into the DAO's hand to invest in however they feel the community should be spending these funds, whether that be on security education, whether that be on building more gamified events, or whatever the community really decides. So I think DAOs are really interesting. I unfortunately haven't done extreme amount of like research into like DAO security, but in general, it's like a token representation, right? So you'll have like different various amount of tokens that represent a portion or a share in that DAO of voting power. So that's an interesting thing to leverage as a community. Like if you have an NFT project and you're a holder, and each NFT you hold acts as a vote in a governance proposal or something along those lines. But from a high level, I think DAOs are really the way that people are going to be doing community governance.
Melty, same question.
Yeah, I think I also think that I very much agree on your points about the DAOs. For me, like when I think about when I'm asked about balancing decentralized nature of Web3 and I guess like governance from the team, right? It's all about me, like our team building up the game with the community. So I take this question in a different way because now it's all about how involved the community is in the decision-making process of building the game product. We don't have to always listen to everything that people suggest, but we try to make sure that they get, like our community, they get to see exactly what is being built up or the plans, and then they're able to share their ideas or, like I said, vote between this or that. We just want them to feel seen and heard. But the final decisions, it's up to the ones who they trusted to make this all happen in the first place, which is the team. So for the game, the highest level decisions are made by us, the co-founders, who we all have like our boots on the ground in our departments. That's how I answer this question, because we do have like, I guess, RuHub, which is like our quote unquote DAO. It's not tied to a smart contract or anything. It's just that these people really do help give ideas, suggestions, even analysis and audit of game development decisions, and also business development decisions as well, and everything to do with the IP. Like we just love to kind of hear about it, and that's us like pouring into the decentralized part of this Web3 community.
Do you guys ever feel like, so the very nature of DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization, well, the idea is to give autonomy to an entire community. In reality, it's usually governed by a few people who make the decision to allow certain decisions to be made by that community that they're buying into. Do you ever feel like it's essentially like a web PSA?
So with DAOs, depending on like how much representation in the DAO you might own, it could, yes, very much be security theater. Because like, let's say that you have a few members that own, let's say you have 4 members that own 15% of the DAO representation, or each represent almost 15% of the DAO on their own. Then they could get together and really sway it any way they wanted to. So I think the biggest issue with DAOs is like the 51% attack, which is basically like if you have a 51, well, technically in a DAO, it wouldn't be really an attack. It's the voting mechanism. So you go with the majority. But let's say that it was a few members of the community that were really governing the use of the funds. Yeah, you could say there could be some kind of I guess collusion between the folks to make a decision or pass a proposal. Which an interesting example I can just draw upon. There was the Nouns DAO. If you're familiar with the Nouns project, they have a very big DAO, well funded, and they were going to donate $100,000 to Zach XBT. Zach XBT is an on-chain forensics guy who really exposes a lot of scams and fraud in the space. And they basically were passing the proposal. It was on the last leg of the proposal, and then somebody vetoed the proposal. Everything looked like it was going to pass, and then they vetoed it at the last moment. And now they have to take it back and vote on it again, this way that it doesn't get vetoed at the end, because of the delegator that they were hosting the tokens. So this is another issue with DAO security, is like if you have these tokens and you're delegating them and you're holding them and staking them as a representation, who is the person controlling the stake of your, like, because they're supposed to act on your behalf, but that doesn't mean that they will act on your behalf. So that's, I guess, a concern when it comes to DAO security, whether you're the person you delegate your tokens to actually act on your behalf or not. And typically what happens is when someone doesn't act on your behalf, they will, act on their own behalf and vote with however they want to. But then the next time around, you'll redelegate your tokens to another person to act on your behalf, who will actually act on your intentions. So that can be an issue. Security, especially when something's time sensitive, it could be a real issue.
So I think the last question before we go into Q&A and open it up to the floor, where do you guys go to try to grow your community? Where are you finding these people who would find interest in joining your community and becoming a member of your efforts?
I think for us, Twitter is a big avenue just because a lot of people who are in Web3 are on Twitter. And then a big reason for that too is like because what we're building is like security tooling and really providing education. And I think the people that it's most applicable to are people who are extremely active in the space, active traders, actively going to a lot of websites for our demographic of user. Or alternatively, it's someone who's brand new into the space and doesn't know what links to click. So our phishing detection services basically help them stay on the right websites. So for us, it's very much people that are completely brand new to the space, or it's people who are veterans in the space who are actively just going through a whole bunch of different links every day. So that type of demographic is easiest for us to find on Twitter or even through other channels like YouTube, and those types of things.
Melty, same question. Where are you going to find new community members to add them to your roster?
During the building phase and the pre-alpha phase is of course Twitter. A lot of community members, so once they're in and they just bring in their friends, like their gaming friends, their Twitch friends, for example, that they think would enjoy the game as well. I mean, it's like a PvP multiplayer game. It's on mobile, and so I think that there's a lot of actually like word of mouth happening. But once we do like go past the alpha stage, it's all about the streaming communities. Especially for us, we're going in like an esports federation. Yeah, as you can see, like I'm also a member of one of the councils, the Metaverse Council on the Global Esports Federation. So we use like leverages of these kinds of relationships with like guilds, esports leagues, to get eyeballs on the game, get people to watch a game that is not only fun to play but also to watch, and then that FOMO should be like what brings them into the community. And once they're in the community, it's like I said, like we really push the fun part of it to the forefront. And so yeah, like Twitter, and then we expand to all of the Web2 things, especially streaming communities.
Okay. With that, we're going to open up Q&A to the room. If you have a question, go ahead and just hit the hand icon and you'll be added, and we will go ahead and add you. Oh, wait, that was me.
You're good to speak.
Hi, okay, I've got my audio unmuted now. My question is, and you've touched on this a little bit, but what are the features that you would really like to see as we're moving into a Web3 world? What are the features that are missing from current social media platforms that would really make it more usable and attainable for you to build your communities?
I'm sorry, I think I cut out, by the way. I don't know if that was for me. If it's not, excuse me. I didn't hear.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, then it must have cut out in the middle there. So my question, and I think that you've all touched on this a little bit, but is what features would you like to see in social media platforms or in community building tools that will make it easier as we move into a Web3 world to connect with your community and to really effectively build the reality and futures that you want for your companies?
I can start, and then maybe you can add on if you have anything additional to tack onto that. But for me, I would like to see a lot more tools in place that are going to protect users, because like the biggest issue in Web3, in my opinion, there's like two major faults right now. It's security and user experience. So that's something that we both aim to tackle. So I think really creating an atmosphere where a community can thrive in a secure manner is really, really important, because a big thing about community and retention in general in Web3 is like if someone gets scammed, they're not going to want to come back to the space. So for us, it's really about making sure that the community is safe. And if there are good platforms out there that are doing a good job at defeating bots and defeating different scam links that are coming into place, I think that's a good place for a community to thrive and continue to be built. So that's my little piece there.
Yeah, I actually agree. Like, I don't know if this is a popular or unpopular opinion, but I actually really like, verification, or like making sure people know who is officially speaking here. Because one of the biggest fears, I guess, for community members who are making use of like Discord project communities or channels, or servers, sorry, is they're scared of being tricked, or they're scared of like imposters. So for me, like moving away from verification of official channels that are owned by brands or companies is actually like a step back. So yeah, that's just like what I think. For me, like my priority is to create like a fun and happy place, right? Like that's my specialty. But you can't have a fun and happy place if people are not feeling safe. Like those two really like go hand in hand. So yeah, that's I agree with that. Like security, for sure, for sure. If they can feel secure, then everybody else's is every other thing, like being happy or like feeling really good about yourself. It just comes way more easy.
So for me, it's probably I would love to see more social proof automation tools. So basically, what we end up getting is really new accounts that are probably less than a week old are usually accounts looking to troll. And having cross-platform verification tools that show social proof, we can tell whether or not a specific account has been around long enough to verify whether or not it's a real person. And by having tools like that available, you can easily discern whether or not what's the intent of that person looking to join our particular community. Next, we have Cyber Guardian. You were on the air.
Jillian.
Oh, sorry. Jillian.
Unmute. I need to talk now.
You hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. I was just wondering if you would be able to explain for me the distinction between the metaverse and Web 3.0. It's Web 3.0 is a little bit of a newer thing for me, and when I go into the NFT space, there seems to be a distinction between the two, and sometimes AR and VR aren't considered necessary for Web 3.0, and I just wondered if you could maybe clear that up for me.
Yeah, sure. So Web3 refers to third generation web technologies. The metaverse is a byproduct of the third generation of the internet, specifically where we have the intersection of virtual worlds where they are accessible cross-platform, right? And so you might have interoperability for several different virtual worlds, and they go at different levels. So you might have like the world building level, which is a level or an instance or a video game level. And then you have the platform level, which is the thing that writes the rules for that virtual world. And then you have the internet level, which is considered to be the metaverse as a whole. And I think this is a great question, specifically because today we did announce the Metaverse for All certification program. which we will be making available very soon in early 2023. And it does go into kind of the nuances and the differences between all these different technologies. If you guys have anything to add to that.
Oh, yeah, I think I have an answer that I give to kind of like my friends who are not yet in or very new to Web3, which is if you just imagine web as like a game or a program, right? Every time it gets updated, you have new features added. So for example, Web 2.0 added things like social media and web apps. And then so Web 3.0 added new features. And one of those new features is the metaverse. And the metaverse is, for me, it doesn't have to be a physical, a virtual environment. Like it doesn't have to be like a 3D room like this. It does not have to be like, I think the metaverse is a entanglement or the coming together of many different universes. So even Twitter could be considered a metaverse. That's my definition of it, and I think it's like easy to understand.
Okay. So anyway, with that, the Metaverse for All certification. So if you go to xrsi.org/for-all, you should find all the information there for sign up, and we'll be jumping into classes. Hey, you guys, where can they find you on the internet after this panel?
Yeah, you can search us on Twitter. It's at wallet_guard. Our website is walletguard.app. You can check us out there. We're always putting out security education, and we're building some really awesome security tooling for the Web3 space.
And Melty?
Oh, yeah.
Where can the people find you?
Yeah, so on Twitter, my handle is Melty Tanti. If you're looking for the game, the handle is Play Runiverse. And if you're looking for the Global Esports Federation, it is GE_Federation. So those are all the three. And from Twitter, you can find every other links as well.
Okay, hey, you guys, thank you so much for joining me for the panel. This has been Building a Community in Web 2 for Web 3, Protecting the Consumer and Community Scams in the Digital Economy.